What's up YouTube? It's UA from the Strictly Broken YouTube channel, and today I have the 8th, I'm pretty sure it's the 8th, I probably want to double check that, the 8th Clan Selection Volume 1 deck profile for you guys today. Today we're doing Shirayuki, and I think Shirayuki is one of the better ones from the set for sure. Now I know there is also a hybrid Shirayuki build that combines Shirayuki with, I don't even know what the name of the unit is, but it creates 2 Excel circles on first grade 3 turn for more pressure. Problem with that build is I think it's a little bit too inconsistent. You know, I'm all for combining variants and making a mash like a hybrid deck, but for this one I felt like it was just a bit too inconsistent. The turns are very, very weak if your opponent hits defensive, and like when you're on that first grade 3 turn, and I'm just not a fan of it. So this is Pure. I think Pure can play a little bit of a long game. It definitely, you know, standard games tend to end within like 2 or 3 grade 3 turns at most, but this one, because of just Shirayuki's sheer defensive power, it can definitely survive a little bit longer than most, even though sometimes you don't even have a big hand. Shirayuki with a defensive trigger out of nowhere can just survive people's turns, which is kind of crazy actually. Anyways, I digress. Let's get straight into the profile. So first off, I have 4 of the new and 4 of the old Shirayuki. You just gotta maximize these. Sometimes it feels a little bit cloggy to have like 4/4 because you don't actually end up with enough soul to use all, but the reason you have to play 4 and 4 is because to enable this card's Vanguard skill, you definitely need one in the drop. And also, again, they are defensive cards. They're very good defensive cards. Even though if you don't have enough soul to maybe use all the ones in your hand, you'll definitely have enough soul over the game. You know, there's a lot of cards that soul charge. Basically, I feel like they're never completely irrelevant or dead, and rewriting this one is also just really good. You know, honestly, when you're playing Excel, any Vanguard you have in your hand is pretty good because you can always just rewrite it, create another lane, get another draw. So yeah, anyways, just 4/4. I don't think you're ever playing less of something, though it feels like sometimes I want to play this down to 3. The fact that hard drawing it is also just really good. You're just trying to max out on these. It is worth noting here, I haven't shown the other rear guards yet. The Vanguard skill of this, there are certain the way you want to structure your board in a way to optimize the Vanguard skill where you counterblast and call a Yuki from drop. You probably want to be attacking with Rainy Madam, because in Rainy Madam, when it doesn't hit, it can catch itself out into the soul, and you don't have to overplay stuff, which always feels really bad in Vanguard. Overplaying is effectively, even though this card pluses, overplaying means you kind of take a neg in resource value. So there are certain ways you want to set up your board to optimize the use of the new Shirayuki's pseudo restanding skill. Anyways, that's these cards. Next up, I got 4 Nuido, and I like to show a Wazu with Nuido because Nuido is kind of inconsistent. You aren't playing Hyuga, right? You're not copying names, so Nuido ends up being super awkward if you only draw 1. At least you have a Wazu to enable your Nuidos more consistently. Typically though, when you have like maybe 2 or 3 Nuidos in your opening hand, you get like 2-3 more soul and enable your Yukis by the mid game or like the second grade 3 turn. That's why Nuido is so good, right? It doesn't plus or anything, but it's a big booster. It gives you more soul, and that's just a really good part of it. The thing with the Wazu now is, like, if you open 3 Nuidos, for example, the 4th Nuido in your deck is effectively dead. So it's just nice to have a Wazu to send that 4th Nuido to drop, so you never have to drive check it and have a completely dead card in your hand. The other good thing about Wazu is, like, again, I did mention that sometimes for the 4/4 Shirayuki feels a bit cloggy, but what's nice about Wazu is that because you can just send him to drop to enable your Shirayuki plays, it doesn't feel like your hand is too clogged up. Sometimes you just want like a extra Yuki and drop, so you can enable this in the early game, and this is like a great setup card for all that stuff. Overall, I think the competing slot that a Wazu had for me was the grade 1, grade 3 searcher, and it got to a point where, yeah, the grade 3 searcher is kind of nice because you can get like a Nuido that you can play down with it, but a Wazu is guaranteed. A Wazu just states guarantee select something to the drop, whereas the grade 3 searcher is a potential select something to your hand, and I'd rather have a guarantee to drop to enable Yuki stuff more than a maybe possible get another Nuido to do another draw and another soul charge. So that's why I upped a Wazu's count ultimately, and I only played 2 copies of the grade 3 searcher, as you will see, which is very different from a lot of lists. They attempt to play 4 of that card. It's just when you can Awazu send a Shirayuki to grave, you don't actually need that many more Shirayukis to hand, right? You're fine with just your other cards that get them. Like this card, broken card. I think it's, yeah, Jokatsu Girl. This card is so broken. Like, it's hard for me to explain all the board orientations where you can get like maximum value for like using Jokatsu Girls and all your does not hit effects. Those are actually very complicated. I'd like to think that Shirayuki is a little bit more of a complicated cerebral kind of deck, because optimizing the ways you can not hit and then get value after proccing Vanguard Shirayuki's effect and skill, a little bit complicated. The general rule of thumb is that you just swing with Jokatsu Girl later in the battle phase, because the later the battle phase goes, the more likely your opponent has to guard the swings. In the early game, that's not necessarily the case, but definitely late game, if you go Jokatsu Girl as your later swings, your opponent is basically forced to guard them or they're going to higher damage. So yeah, that's the general rule of thumb for Jokatsu Girl. Anyways, I didn't really see a need to play too many grade 3 searchers because this card exists, right? Like if you draw a fairly aggressive early game hand and you just swing with this, they hit defensive, you don't hit, but you can swing with the Jokatsu Girl, and then it doesn't hit and you can look for Yukis. Like, why do you need to play grade 3 searchers? You have so many cards in the deck that search Shirayukis super consistently. So yeah, that's my logic for that. Next up, 4 copies of this new grade 2. This card is so funny. It's like a great Vanguard ride, because you can just like ride it and then you call down a Yuki, poke them. I've never like played with a card in Vanguard that does kind of like a kind of, I sneak in, cheat out an attack, and it just bounces back to my hand, and it just feels really funny and cheesy to do something like that, especially when you call out the old Yuki, Soul Blast 2, and then you can just like poke them super hard on grade 2 turns. Super hilarious, super fun. So this card's sick. And then its rearguard skill is super good for just getting like a re-ride for next turn, or the old Yuki hand for defensive value, right? The beauty of getting the re-ride is that not only can it be a re-ride, but it's also a defensive card in your hand, a 30k shield effectively. And you know, a lot of decks, when you get like a re-ride card for your next turn, it's like an active investment that you have to put, because getting that re-ride means you're not getting a card that has shield, meaning that, you know, you're taking a little bit of a risk if your opponent's gonna do a really powerful push turn. But at the bare minimum with this deck, when you're getting your re-ride, you're also getting just the highest shield value card in your deck. So that's really nice about this deck. Something that a lot of decks don't have access to is that kind of flexibility. Overall, this card's just really, really good when you in tandem with your new Shirayuki's Vanguard skill. Next up, for grade 1s, I play 4 copies of this grade 1 ride card. You're always playing 4 of this. You ride this grade 1, check 7 for a Yuki. It's just so broken because it's plus, right? Pluses are always great, it's always welcome. The second skill, the soul charge when you re-ride, is useful, but yeah, it's basically useful. Getting a soul charge once means you're getting halfway there for another Yuki proc in your hand. So the card is good. I'm not gonna say it's irrelevant, but it definitely feels a little bit underwhelming for a second skill, but it does come up. It does come up. It helps you hit those soul numbers to use more Yukis. Next up, 4 Rainy Madam. So people have cut this card down a little bit sometimes. I don't think you want to cut this card. This card is so broken because it is the best card to use in tandem with your new Yuki, so that you don't take minus value to do your multi-attack, right? This card will cash itself to the soul, you get a Yuki to hand, then Yuki will call out a Yuki from drop, and then in that column, you basically did not have to overplay because this card cashed itself out. So super important to that game plan, and I think I just always wanted, basically, as long as I'm on the Vanguard Yuki and I could do the skill, I always want Rainy Madam on my board as an attacker in like the Excel column for 13. So I think this card is absolutely busted in the deck. Yeah, I think 4 is correct for this card. Next up, final grade 1 is 2 of the grade 3 searcher. I've mentioned it throughout the profile that I have preferred Awazu over grade 3 searcher because Awazu is guaranteed. With that being said, you know, grade 3 searchers have some obvious plus sides to them. You know, they are grade 1, so they have 5k more shield, and they interact better with Nuido than Awazu does. But I think Awazu is a better card overall. I think this ratio is the ratio that I had the most trouble with deciding on, but for now it is 2 and 3. And yeah. And then for triggers, I have 8 crit, 4, ooh, I'm gonna straighten this out for aesthetic purposes, 4 PGs, 4 draw, 4 PGs, 4 heals, and the starter. So the very typical trigger lineup with Yukis and how they can offensively negate your opponent's power as well. You know, negating defensive triggers and stuff. Basically with the Vanguard Yuki and the rearguard Yuki just minus 5k more. I feel like crits are just better. You don't really need fronts because Yuki creates a built-in front with her Vanguard skill. And then if you have multiples of these, like on the rearguards and stuff, your opponent is just, you're creating super big rearguards without needing fronts basically. And I just rather have crits because your opponent's guarding 15 to 25 already on swings. Why need fronts? I'd rather just have that crit pressure. And then, you know, putting crit pressure on a rearguard like Jakatsu Girl is just super great too. They have to guard it and then you plus. And then when you plus, you can probably live. So I think 8 crit is correct. There is some argument for draws. I'm not a fan of draws, and that's just a personal preference, I think. I just don't think draws are very good cards in general, like the vanilla draws. PG draws are good. But yeah, so that's the trigger lineup, that's the deck. I definitely feel like the deck is actually really good, really solid. The defensive, like I said, defensively, the deck has like a really good shot at surviving a lot of the time because your grade 3 rides are also defensive shields, so you can just hold hands that are a little bit greedier and not have to worry about it being like just like a weak hand with not a lot of shield power, because 30k and then this is 30k divided among 3. So yeah, that's it for this profile. Test out the deck. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I play test a lot of hours for each of these videos just so I have something relevant and informative to say about each profile. So I do put in a lot of work for these. Hope you guys notice. And it's UA signing off. Peace.